I've splayed the legs on my dovetailed kitchen stool, not just for beauty, but for strength. By splaying the legs out, it'll make it so this structure can take a lot of weight. But I want to make extra sure that with age and with use, that the legs of this splayed stool don't splay out further. So to add even more strength, I have put in a dovetailed apron. On the front, I've added a decorative shape to enhance the beauty of the piece. In the back, I'll add a second apron for strength, but I see no need to add a shape on that. It's pretty obvious that it's the back. So I'd like to show you the process that I went through to dovetail the apron into the face of my stool. So before we get to dovetailing, let's just talk about some things we need to do to set up. At the very top of our stool, we have a shoulder-to-shoulder measurement, and I've taken that shoulder-to-shoulder measurement and added 3/8 on either side, and that gives me the length of my dovetail. It's about half the thickness of our uprights. We don't want it to pierce through. So once I have that, it's a lot like cutting a regular through dovetail, except we're only cutting it on one side. So I have my tools ready. Let's put it in the vise and get started. So this is just like cutting the tails like we did earlier, except you're going to feel a little funny because it seems like you're only cutting half of one. And this is the waist side. We'll just be cutting on this side. Make sure everything's tight in the vise. So I've cut down to my marking gauge scribe, and now I'll cut down along the marking gauge scribe this way to define my shoulder, and if I need to, I'll clean it up with the chisel. Now that I've made my saw cuts, I'm just going to clean up the shoulder with a sharp paring chisel. So that's one shoulder clean. I'll go ahead and do the other side, and then I'll be ready to transfer it onto my stool. So now that I have my tails cut on my apron, I can transfer it onto my stool. I'm going to use my marking knife for this. I've made sure that my shoulders align with the inside edge of my pin boards, and that the top of my apron aligns with the underside of my tailboard. Don't press hard. It'll make the knife wander. Just transfer it gently. I'd rather see you do 3 light strokes that are true than 1 stroke that runs off because the grain pulls the knife. Okay, now that I have that transferred, I'll use my marking gauge to mark the thickness of my apron. So now with that thickness set, I'll use my marking gauge to scribe a line for that thickness. Don't worry about matching up exactly. If your scribe line goes a little bit past where your apron is, it just shows that it was hand cut, which to me adds a great deal of value to the piece. I'll do that on both sides. Let's see, and now I'll use the square side of my dovetail saddle square, transfer a line down to my marking gauge scribe at 90 degrees. And just to make my life easier so I can see it a little bit better, I will ride my mechanical pencil right in that marking gauge scribe. And again on my knife line on the top. And this is the waist I'm removing. I'll mark out the other side like that, and I'll be ready to cut my mortise. So now with everything marked, I'm ready to make my cuts. When I make my cut, one thing I don't mind if my saw kerf goes a little bit past my marking gauge scribe line. That's just another indication that this was made by hand. In fact, if this were an antique piece, an antique collector might be looking for those identifying marks of the craftsman. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to make my saw curve here, then here, and then I'm going to make a bunch of cuts in between to just make it easier to chisel out the waste in the middle. So you can see I let that go past there. It makes it easier, and it says it was made by hand. Now with my saw curves done, I'm going to use my Japanese style dovetailing chisel to get that waste out in between. So with the majority of the waste removed, I'll switch to a more of a paring action to get close to my line. As I close in on my dimension, I'll switch to a wider chisel to get a better reference point. All right, so I've hit my scribe lines all around. I'll go ahead and do the other side, and then I'll be ready to test fit. So now with my mortises chopped out, I'm ready to test my fit. I've got it seated in there. I'm going to tap it with the deadblow mallet. Once on each side, bring it down evenly. This will prevent cracking. As I go down, I'm looking for the start of a crack. If I do, I'll need to tap it out and make more adjustments. This is starting to pull away a little bit here. That's not a big deal. I can fix it. Besides that, I think we're good and we're ready to go. As I tap it out, I'll want to put a block right here, right on my pin board. What I want it to do is I want to brace those fibers down. It'll tend to pull the fibers up. It's different. We're dovetailing into long grain and not into end grain. The fibers are going to want to pull up as we pull our piece out. So as I tap this out, I'll keep this block right here. That'll keep me from having a defect there. Once I have it out, I'll glue it up and we'll be done. So I've made some adjustments to my joints and I'm ready to glue this in. I want to show you the process because I'll need to have these clamping cauls in place. You can see I've used some double stick tape to hold them on. It's going to keep the pressure of my clamp evenly distributed across my apron. So get some glue in there. So with my glue in there, my piece tapped in, I'm going to apply clamping pressure. I'm going to put the heads of my pipe clamp right on those cauls. I'm going to keep the black bar of the pipe clamp a little bit elevated from the surface of my workpiece. If that black bar makes contact with the glue, it'll leave a black stain. So I've got good clamping pressure. I'll add a few F-clamps along this seam to make sure I have a good glue squeeze out there. Our dovetailed apron is installed. Subscribe to see us put the finishing touches on our dovetailed kitchen stool.